Man, welcome back to another episode of the Think Successfully Room. This is a platform we focus on building mindsets. We building character, bringing value to both you and your people, and aligning your body with your intelligence. I'm your host, QB So effing amazing. Right now, this is actually the first lawyer I have ever spoke to on the platform, Jonathan Steele. Appreciate you for joining me on the Think Successfully Room. So Jonathan is a top lawyer, family law attorney, shares expert insights on divorce, custody, and digital privacy. He's well known and recognized as a super lawyer, right? So Jonathan, again, appreciate you for hopping on this video call.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Man, I'm on here for the fellas, man. I've seen a lot of situations, a lot of situations that involve, custody, right? Why is it in the courtroom that the courts always favor the mother over the father?
Um, that's not so much the case anymore. It sort of depends on where you are.
Hmm.
But courts are slow to change, laws slow to change. And there used to be something that was called the tender years doctrine that just basically said at the early ages, kids are better off with their moms than they are with their dads.
Uh-huh.
And courts have clung to that. But over time, that's changed. We've gotten more to a point where um, the courts assume or presume that equal time with both parents is in the child's best interest.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that because it was actually a clip that you had posted on IG. I was going through some of your clips, and you had said something that was key as far as, it takes two people to have a child, right? So it takes two people to raise one, and I honestly didn't think, you know, uh, again, you had brought up the fact that, you don't care how good of a mother you are, you can never take the father's shoes. So what are are there any very complicated cases that you had to handle regarding that? And does it let's say the couple isn't married, does the court look at that different if it's not a married couple that's fighting for custody?
It shouldn't. Kids from a married household should be on equal footing with kids from an unmarried household. So that should be the same. And, every case is different. Every case is unique. All the facts are different,
Hmm.
which keeps the job interesting. But, a lot of times you'll see moms that will keep a distance between the children and their father for personal reasons. Maybe they're trying to make sure they get child support. Maybe they have some animosity towards dad that's not even related to the child. And so they sort of try to get in the middle of that relationship, which hurts only the child.
Yeah, because it's a lot of times, fathers, they give up too, just because they don't really know the law. They don't know what they can do and what they cannot do. So, if it is a time to where the mother is more so keeping, the father away from his child for personal reasons, a lot of times we be lost on how to go about it, right? So, for the guys that's not married, do they have to take certain steps to establish paternity, assuming that they were not at the hospital to sign a birth certificate?
Yeah, but whether they were or they weren't, they need to adjudicate paternity in their paternity case as
Mm.
sort of the step one before they get to child support, before you get to parenting time, decision making, any of that. He has to be adjudicated to be the father. When a child is born during a marriage, there's a presumption that the husband is the father. That
Mhm.
can be rebutted sometimes, but just a short answer to your question is, yeah, you have to adjudicate paternity for dad.
Okay. Yeah, so that was some concerns that I had, and again, I was speaking for the guys, and really using this content as a way to give them guidance and let them know, like, whether, father, you still have certain rights that you can, as far as making sure you have a relationship with your child. So what is I guess what factors do courts consider when determining child custody arrangements?
It's going to depend on what state you're in. Here in Illinois, there's about a dozen,
Mhm.
maybe 13 or so factors that the court looks at. Whether there's a history of abuse, whether there's a pattern in terms of what has historically happened between the child and the other parent. Um, One of the most important factors that the court ends up looking at is which parent has a willingness and ability to foster a relationship between the child and the other parent. So if you have so much animosity that you just can't put your child first, you're blinded by hatred, and you badmouth the other parent every opportunity you get, and basically try to erase that parent. That's going to cut against you.
Mhm.
Whereas the other parent that's putting the animosity aside, putting the child first, thinking what's best for the child, how can I foster a relationship with the other parent, that's going to go a long way towards the court thinking the child is best served with more time with you.
Right. Now statistically speaking, is it I'm not sure if you look at these type of statistics as a lawyer, but statistically speaking, does the child have a better chance of being I guess being successful in life with a father present in the household?
I don't know the statistics on that, but I know generally speaking from like custody evaluations that I've read from well-regarded psychologists, psychiatrists that have studied this, they have a preference towards both parents being involved. Now,
Yeah,
there's the caveat there that both parents being involved have to be good parents. So if you have
absolutely.
a bad parent or an alcoholic or a drug abuser, are you better off with that parent than without? Maybe not.
Hmm.
Depending how bad that is and what kind of impacts that has on the child, that may overcome that presumption that uh, time with both parents is best.
Right. Okay. And I don't mean to bombard you with so many questions, but it was another clip I seen you post as well, as far as let's say there's a argument going on in the household, right? And it begins to be too much to handle, and someone storms out. You had mentioned that that's not a good look. Could you kind of explain why that's bad for someone to just storm out the household?
Yeah, if you're leaving, which is understandable, it's emotional time. It's probably really tense. Um, but just in terms of logistics alone,
Hmm.
once you're out of the house, if you haven't filed a paternity case yet or a divorce case yet, you have to go through the system. You have to file your case. You have to serve the other party. You have to file a motion to set parenting time and to allocate decision making. And then the other side gets time to find a lawyer to file a response. And then you come to court maybe for a status date where nothing happens. And then you come to court maybe a month later, and maybe then something will happen, or maybe there will be another continuance. So
Hmm.
you may now be 3, 4, 5 months down the road after you left, and have no ability to see your child because the court hasn't even had an opportunity to look at the case yet. And the status quo is important. What the child is used to is important. And so the last 5 months that you've been out of the child's life are going to cut against you because the child is starting to forget you. They haven't built a
Hmm.
schedule with you in 5 months. And so now we're talking about how do we gradually reintegrate you into the child's life, as opposed to if you were staying in the home and you were seeing your child whenever you were home
Yeah.
while that process was playing out, then by the time the court looks at it, you can say, I was with my child yesterday. We have a great relationship.
Right. So now, when you say you brought up the fact that if you go on for 5 months, now what if this is just the court going based off what they feel like? If you're not in the household for the past 5 months, they just making an assumption that the child is forgetting you, have forgotten you, even if the child hasn't.
That's going to be somewhat age dependent. You know, like an 8-year-old probably won't forget you, even though you were gone for a few months.
Yeah.
A 1-year-old is a little different. They, you know, their sense of time isn't as good. You know, they're sort of in that amnesia age up until 2 or 3, where they don't really remember a ton. And at those younger ages, the science is frequent, shorter visits are better than long visits. And so, you know, you're trying to just develop a routine with them where they're seeing you frequently. So if you walk out of a 1-year-old's life and you're gone for 5 months, they may start to forget you.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, um is there any advice you would have on, because obviously it's a lot of people out here that's having kids, having babies that's not even in a marriage, right? Is there any advice for couples that can possibly help them co-parent better? You know what I'm saying? So that is fair on both sides.
Yeah, there's a few things, you know, some of it's sort of easier said than done advice where you say, you know, put your child first, put them
Hmm.
over your own needs. But, you know, giving concrete examples of how to do that, I think is more helpful to someone. So you say, you know, it's normal to trash talk the other parent because you fell out of love with them. You're not in a relationship anymore. Maybe they're doing things to make your life miserable, but do that when your child's not with you. Do that to a friend on the phone when your child's asleep and they're not listening to you. You know, there's a proper time and a place for it. And then do certain things to try to foster that relationship, but with the other parent. You know, if you're a dad, then maybe you're wanting to help the kids make Mother's Day gifts, birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, that kind of thing. Because that's showing the children or the child that even though you're not together anymore, the other parent is still a part of their life, and it's not their fault that you're not together. And you know, it makes for a better relationship all around. And then, you know, I think there's a number of apps that can be helpful depending on the circumstance. There's something called Our Family Wizard. There's something called Talking Parents.
Mm.
Our Family Wizard is good. It has a calendar function where you can share calendars of like your kid's school schedule and extracurriculars and that kind of thing. It has expense sharing in the app where you can like upload, here's the doctor's bill, and then you can reimburse the other parent within the app, and it keeps track of all that in a neat way where if one side's incurring expense for something and the other side's incurring an expense for something else, maybe you're not sending money in both directions, you're just netting out the difference. And it
Right.
helps you do that. And then finally, there's a messaging feature within the app where it actually has a tone meter where it'll tell you, you know, you're being hostile in your message to the other parent, you're being sarcastic, and
Wow.
it'll suggest revisions to it. And you know, that feature alone tends to be pretty helpful in terms of trying to get people to co-parent well together.
Now, okay, what was the name of that app, that messenger thing you just said? What was the
It's
name?
it's called Our Family Wizard.
So it's able to analyze a text message and really tell you, like give you a meter on how hostile this text message may come off.
Yep.
That's actually a game changer, man. I have, not me necessarily being involved in a situation, but I have been around people that send a text message and it turned into something else because of how, they worded it and the other person perceived it. So I think that will be definitely beneficial for couples that co-parent. That way, if you are writing someone, right, and you want to run it through this analyzer, and it tells you like, look, maybe this message is too hostile, maybe you should try rewording it like that. I feel like that'll be very beneficial on both ends, man. Appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think it's very important sometimes. Sometimes, you know, the message is lost over a text message.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't mean it to sound how it sounded. And so
Right.
having a second set of eyes to look at it before it goes out can help.
Man, yeah, I definitely appreciate that, man. I'm gonna make sure I make that a highlight when I share the content. Um Now, uh another problem I see as well is that, it may be someone that doesn't, bad mouth somebody directly to them, but they may hop on social media and do it. And I'm not really sure if they looking for sympathy or they're trying to be entertaining about the situation. But with the courtroom, also look at what's happening on social media as far as one party trying to humiliate the next party.
Yeah, so I mean, generally, conduct that occurs outside of the presence of the child isn't going to be a huge factor in court. So, if you're just going on social media and you're venting and your child never sees it, maybe it doesn't impact your case. But where it's going to impact your case is maybe it's an indicator to the court of that willingness and ability to facilitate a relationship. If you're going on social media and you're just saying, my child's father is a deadbeat and pays no child support and is a terrible dad, and he sleeps with all these women and he's a bad person and has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. If I'm a judge and I'm looking at that, I'm saying, sure, the child may not have seen it today, but once you put something out there on social media, you can never take it back, and so maybe the child sees it someday. But also, it just goes to your state of mind that maybe you're not willing to facilitate a relationship between the child and their dad, as evidenced by what you're putting out on social media. So it might end up cutting against you if you're out there putting that kind of stuff on the internet.
Well, the reason why I was asking, and I wanted an opinion from an actual lawyer, because I see stuff like that on social media all the time, and it gets under my skin, sort of. Especially if I know the guy personally that's being talked about, and his character don't seem, what they're trying to make him out to be on social media. Especially when we're talking about two adults that should be adult enough to be able to talk to each other outside of social media. So I didn't know if that was something that the courtroom would look at or not. Now let's say there is a situation to where the father, the male, does want to be in the child's life, but going back to what we were saying, as far as the mother having certain feelings towards him that's getting in the way of his relationship with his child, is there ever a time where going to the court may be a wrong move? Like, at what point should he say, look, I'm tired of this, let's go to court so I can make sure I get fair share with my child?
If mom is keeping the child from dad for whatever reason and dad wants to be involved, court may be the only option. Oftentimes it is. It's hard to think of a good time where I would tell someone, don't go to court, something bad's going to happen. Unless, I could see maybe if you were struggling with addiction or something like that, and I wanted, as your lawyer, to clean you up before bringing you to court, then I might tell you to sit tight on going to court, clean yourself up, have a good environment for the child to come to once the child starts having parenting time, and then go to court. So just basically get your ducks in a row before running into court.
Right. Okay. So I came across a term that's called a VAP, a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. Now, is that the same thing as a birth certificate? What exactly is that?
It's not the same thing, but it's similar. So normally, if you are present in the delivery room when your child is born as the father, the nurse or the doctor, whoever happens to be assisting after the delivery, will bring in a form for everybody to sign that says you're acknowledging that you are, in fact, the father of this child. And then you sign the birth certificate also at the hospital. The voluntary acknowledgement of paternity, it can serve as the sort of first step in the filing of a petition to establish paternity in a courtroom. And it's very hard to undo. It's very hard to unsign. So if you sign it in the delivery room, you should be sure that you're the dad, because you might have a hard time later asking the judge for a paternity test if you're saying, well, I'm not so sure that I'm the dad anymore, because then mom's going to throw that VAP, or voluntary acknowledgement, in your face and say, he signed it, he's the dad. And then you're trying to find a reason out of it. You're trying to find or prove fraud or something like that to try to get out of the VAP and try to ask for a paternity test. So it's more of a precursor to establishing paternity than the birth certificate alone is.
Man, you know, Jonathan, I got you giving so much information, valuable information, just in the giving of 20 minutes, man. Before, you know, we decide, because I like to keep the episodes brief just because of people's attention span. But before, you know, we wrap up the episode, man, it was another thing that you, as far as the privacy of your clients, like how do you go as far as keeping what's being talked about private? It says you had digital protection strategies that you use to kind of safeguard what's being talked about.
Yeah, you know, it depends on the client, obviously, but I like to help a client navigate the sort of digital landscape, because a lot of times people don't really understand oversharing on social media, what kind of impacts that can have, not only on your life, but in your family law case as well. So I like to try to be able to help clients understand, here's the ramifications of having a public profile or having pictures disseminated of you and your child, or you without your child, that may have metadata in the photos that says when they were taken, where they were taken, to try to like piece together information about your life that maybe you just thought it was a harmless, I sent out a group text to my friends and it had a picture. Well, that picture may, you know, resurfaced in your case. It may say more about what was going on than what's actually in the picture. So I like to be able to try to educate clients on privacy and security in general, but also just try to help them stay in a place where they're not hurting their case during their case.
Okay, so now another question just came up. So let's say they have a whole, let's say, I don't know, a list of pictures, just a portfolio of pictures, and the child isn't in neither one of them. That can look bad on them, and you know, during the case.
Yeah, so you know, if let's say if mom is saying, I'm the mom of the year and dad's the terrible person, should never see the child, I should have all the time. And then you look at her social media account and you see real-time posting of, you know, times that she should be with the child, times that she should be parenting the child. And instead she's out drinking. Instead she's out partying and traveling, and presumably then the child's being left with a babysitter or another family member. All else being equal, the court's going to prefer the child to be with a parent. So the court might start to chip away at some of that parenting time, saying, this time's intended for you. It's not intended for you to pawn off onto somebody else. And so if you're not using it, we're going to give that time to dad.
That's interesting. Okay. I like that. Okay, man. Jonathan, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, man. So like, how would you be willing? I know you probably you a busy guy. How when do you think it'd be possible for you to get you on another episode? Is that doable?
It sure is. I'm happy to come on. We can find a mutual time.
Because that's the thing. I know you a lawyer. Obviously, you want to get paid for your information. So I know it's certain you don't want to ditch out too information. That's why I thought I'd ask you.
No, I like being able to provide people, you know, advice and information. You know, obviously I have clients to represent, so I juggle the two, but I'm happy to come on if we can find a time that works for both of us.
Man, appreciate you, Jonathan. Is there anything you wanna throw out there as far as maybe more advice you have before we close out?
You know, to the extent you were targeting the gentlemen out there and dads in general, try not to be discouraged by the assumption that moms are best, that time is best with mom, because courts have moved away from that. And, you know, you may have to fight. You may have to, you know, endure some litigation and some nastiness from mom, but your child will be better for it and you'll get there. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of time. So it's worth trying.
Yeah, definitely, man. Especially when the babies is involved, man. Don't again. Yeah, I believe the same thing, that they shouldn't be discouraged, especially if you care about a relationship with your child. Because the worst thing you can do is to give up and then your child grow up not knowing you at all. All right, Jonathan, appreciate you, man. I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. Life is good, y'all. Life is wonderful. Be blessed to be alive. Self-sufficiency is how you survive. To the kings and queens, to the guys and goddess, forever and always. Think successfully. Yeah.